I went through things like being molested for 2 years. I was raped. I mean, there were a lot of things that have happened that I've experienced that I feel like there's a lot of experiences that I can help with. My mother was very devastated, very hurt. She stabbed herself repeatedly in the stomach and throat. And yeah, and that's someone who's very angry at themselves. Women usually don't commit suicide that way. And I believe she was trying to take my life to shelter me from living what she thought is a terrible life, a terrible world.
Your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she took her life. She shared her pain with you. What would you say to her now?
I forgive you.
You are freaking strong. Well, hello, everybody. So it's so important to surround yourself with connection, with people that get you through, that stand by you and makes your life matter. In this episode, I have the author of Sweet Freedom, Shirley Buck, and we're going to get into a little bit of the book, her story, and how the people in her life are the reason she's here and the reason she gets to give to you today. Shirley, welcome to the show, and how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about it. I mean, you have your best friends, you have your husbands, people. Tell a little bit about, you had a rough childhood, and yet there's shining lights of the people that stood for you and around you to help you see your way through. Let's get into it.
Okay, the title of the book is Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear. And as far as the people in my life, my children, my grandchildren, my best friends, several friends are always in my corner, and that is a big help for me. My book touches upon the years of severe abuse and trauma that I endured and how I overcame it by learning the methods of changing your mindset. And I had never went through traditional therapy or meds. I strictly studied mindset and laws of attraction, and have now come up with a 90-day course to help others begin their journey and change their mindset and escape pain of trauma and abuse as well.
Okay, so with that, going from, and this started young.
Yes.
Started really young. That what pulls you through and what helped you come out to the other side?
Well, I'd kind of have to explain my story a little bit. I was born to deaf parents, which in itself is a challenge because it becomes your responsibility to take care of your parents at a very young age. For example, I had interpreted their divorce at 5 years old in a lawyer's office. So maybe one of my gifts is being able to have that strength and responsibility, to take care of others. That probably, was instilled in me at a young age, that helped me become that person to be an advocate and get through adversity even at a young age.
So you were surviving.
I was surviving. Yes.
So within that, and then your mom still, she became an alcoholic, right?
Yeah, around the age of 8 years old, she became an alcoholic and an abusive alcoholic. She'd stay gone for days at a time. She would come back battered, bruised, a couple times raped. I had to interpret at 11 years old in emergency rooms what have happened to her. I had to go to an abortion clinic at 11 years old and explain to them that my mother needed to get an abortion. I helped her with writing out rent checks and, calling utility companies. I was always responsible for everything in our life. And when she was sober, she was a beautiful person, but that she wasn't sober very often. And she took her anger out on me. She was raised to be hidden in the bedroom when people would come over because they were embarrassed she was deaf. So she had a lot of insecurities. And I think the divorce and she had remarried, and he talked her into selling our house that my dad had left us. And he moved us into a terrible apartment and took all our money from the house and just left. So a lot of things had prompted her to start drinking. And at the age of me being 13, she took her own life. She also attempted to take my life that night as well.
A lot. And here you are, the heroine at the other side of here, giving to others. Tell us about the journey and how you are here now.
Well, that's not where the abuse had stopped, because when, I moved in with my father, I mean, the book explains the whole story, but it was years and years of abuse and trauma, which led to me getting pregnant at 15, having to give up my son for adoption. I went through a whole lot of things, and it wasn't until I was 23 years old that I actually had a nervous breakdown and just lost it. I thought for sure I was going to end up in an institution for the rest of my life. The anxiety, the depression that I battled for years, mostly suppressing it and just hanging out with friends and partying hard. And I've been through eating disorders. I've been everywhere from 80 pounds to 200 pounds on the scale. I've experienced a lot of different scenarios of trauma and abuse. And I was engaged to my children's father. He is my ex-husband, but we are still very good friends, and we travel with our family together. Still to this day, we've been divorced 23 years, maybe more. But I guess he provided a safe place for me, and I knew he could take care of everything. And that's when I felt like I could finally just break down and let it all out. It was the scariest time of my life, to be honest. And that moment prompted my years of getting my hands on every self-help book, devouring them. For lack of a better word, labels. I don't like labels. I don't like labels because they make people feel hopeless. When you tell someone, well, you are diagnosed with PTSD, depression, not that you're not having those things, but it's almost like here's a prescription, and this is your situation, this is your life. And it's not. It's you can overcome things, and it takes work, but it's not real hard work. It's actually a simple process. It's just not easy, if that makes sense. But that's how I changed my mindset. And then I decided to write my book. I'm now 56 years old, so it's been a long road since when I decided to finally publish my book, write it, publish it, and help others, because that was the scariest time of my life, and I don't wish that on anybody. And if I can overcome it, anyone can. And I just want to help as many people as I can. And to overcome their fears and depression, anxiety.
Up until 23, you already lived 3 lives, and through the pain, and even in a closed. I will share. So I had 2 stapendectomies. So I was actually deaf at one time. Most people don't know that. And that you lived within that closed world of no words, of their own retraction of that outward focus, which is another whole thing to experience. And that
it is, and it's a whole different community. It's a whole different way of life. And I suppose that's why they have CODA, which is an organization that helps adults that were children of deaf parents. I've never attended anything like that, but I've heard of it. I am fluent in sign language, and I would love to work with the deaf community as well, or with the children of deaf parents. That is another route that I'm exploring.
That right? I'm sorry, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So first of all, I have this, you are freaking strong.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome. And that when it was finally a place that you could, that, and it's interesting, as much it was a silent place, the noise, there was so much noise in such a quiet place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What an irony in that.
Yeah.
So when you have the time to finally say, all right, I can sit here and the world's not going to come at me, literally, physically and emotionally, said, all right, I can, I'm going to start healing. Most people don't do that. Again, how strong you are.
Well, I was broken, and I felt terrified, and I really didn't think I was going to overcome anything. So I want to make that clear. I didn't just say, well, hey, I'm strong, I'm going to get through this. I was broken. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't go to work for 3 months. I never even called off. I never quit. I just didn't go, and I didn't want to leave the house. It was a long road, and but I've always wanted a better life. I always wanted to experience life in a good way. There was always that drive inside of me, and I didn't want to give up. So I did have to take the time to be broken for a while, but I did then decide I didn't want to go the therapy route. I had known other people who'd been through it, and had been going for years and taking medication, and not really getting too far, just always saying, well, I have this condition, that's my identity. I didn't want that to be me. I'm not knocking therapy. It works for some people. I'm just saying it wasn't my route. And I feel like I'm giving another option for other people who maybe feel like therapy isn't the route, or have been through therapy for a time and feel like it's not working, and want to talk to someone who's actually lived through things like that. I went through things like being molested for 2 years. I was raped. I mean, there were a lot of things that have happened that I've experienced, that I feel like there's a lot of experiences that I can help with through my experience.
And writing the book is certainly that outward focus. So the world is in pain, and there's not a shortage of that people that are listening. So you're starting from they're in bed, right? And it's like, where do they go next? What would you say to them?
I'd say, first of all, change your focus point. I mean, everywhere we go, everybody's telling us the world's in pain. This is happening. This terrible thing is happening. All these illnesses, all these like plagues, all these everything. And you turn on the TV, and then you listen to the news, and you hear about the crime and the people that are victims and all these terrible, terrible things. It starts to become a focus. I mean, even billboards, everywhere you go, is just always telling us how painful the world is and how terrible the world is. And it starts to condition your mind. So I think it's important to see the beauty in the world, turn off the news. I know people like to watch it, and you don't want to be completely in the dark. Obviously, you want to know what's going on. And there's like different emails you can get with clips of, telling you what you need to know that's going on in the world, and then turn it off. Like, when you focus on it and it's making you angry and it's making you sad and it's just making you feel hopeless, you're not doing anything to help the cause. All you're doing is hurting yourself. So unless there's something you can actually do about something that's going on, and people say, wait, are you telling me to stick your head in the sand? Yeah, a little bit. Maybe not in the sand, but maybe turn your head in a different direction and look at things that are good that's going on in life. There's so much beauty out there, and there's so many good people, so many good organizations. There's music, there's dance, and one of the things I think is super important, as adults, we forget to be childlike. I think that's super important. Play, do the things you love to do. Look at the world through the eyes of a child, because they know what's going on, and when we were younger, there were these same wars and all this going on, but we were out hanging out with our friends, we were laughing, we weren't focused on that. It's the same things going on, just as adults we're super focused, and you can't be super focused on the negative and the pain and heal. You just can't, or even enjoy life, so I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, so what you're saying is turn it off.
Turn it off.
Okay, there we go there. Then next, as far as, because again, there's a lot of people in your life. So let's get into that. The role of finding people that are important, the role of that bring you joy and love. So turn off the things that are not working and the things that are causing you pain, if you can.
Right. If
And
you can, yeah, some people are in some situations that it would take a lot more work to get out of a situation, especially if they're living in a very traumatic situation. That requires a lot more work. But the people in your life, yes, surround yourself with good people. They're really not hard to find. There's all kinds of different groups. I just actually joined a women's club that does a lot of community work in my community, and meeting some new wonderful women and supported women. And I also draw on some friends that I've had since I was like 9 years old. I have a best friend who went through all of that with me. And it's funny, when she read the book, she was like, I knew all this was happening, but I didn't know the depth of what you were feeling and how, and it's so, she's like, to read it was just like a whole different experience. My children, super close to my children. I was divorced when they were 2 and 4. So I was a single mom for many years. And I just always, it's important to show children respect. I know that a lot of people don't think that that's true, but if you want respect from your children, you have to give them respect as well. And as much as I was strict and had, a lot of discipline in their lives, I also played a lot with them. I also made things like lighthearted and playful and fun. And we've just always been close, even through their teenage years. I never had those, I hate you, I don't want to talk to you type. We really are a close-knit family. And I have 2 grandchildren now, which light up my world. And I don't know if I could have written the book without them. I think there's a reason I waited so long, because they kept me here when I had to go back there, if that makes sense, But I do want to write a couple more books, like parenting after trauma and abuse, and also dating after trauma and abuse, because I've been through the whole pattern of dating people that, didn't treat me the way I needed to or deserved to be treated. But yeah, and you don't have to have a lot of good people in your life. You have a handful of good people in your life. Yes, you can draw on them for strength, but I will say that it's important to take ownership and be your own best friend, and to learn to love and respect yourself, because we can always try to get others' approvals, and that's kind of dangerous in a way. Uh, Not that we don't want to make others happy, but if we don't love ourselves, then it's a very tough road, because you can't get the love that you desire and you deserve from anyone else. You have to love yourself. The happiness comes from inside. So yeah, being surrounded by good people is important, but I think self-love and being your own best friend is even more important.
okay, the title, Sweet Freedom.
Sweet freedom whispered in my ear.
Yeah. Tell us what the meaning of the title.
Okay, I think it may be the first time I said this on a podcast, but The song Someone Saved My Life Tonight by Elton John. Now, being a child of deaf parents, music was super, super important. It was probably my savior. But that song actually describes the whole night that my mother took her life. I mean, down to like the people in the basement. You almost had me roped and tied, altar bound. He's probably talking about marriage. I'm talking about coffins, like that whole song describes the night. Like it's 4 o'clock in the morning, listen to me. I'm sleeping with myself tonight. I'm sick and tired. Thank God my music's still alive. But it was like a sweet freedom whispered in my ear. I survived that night. I continued to live, and it was I never knew that would be the title of my book, and I struggled with the title of my book more than I did actually writing the book. But I was, I get a lot of ideas right before I'm falling asleep, and that kind of popped into my head, and I was like, oh yes, that's a perfect title for my book. So that's how the title had come along.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go there. Your mom,
Mm-hmm.
obviously she took her life. She shared her pain with you. What would you say to her now?
I forgive you.
Oh, wow. Um, and that piece, when were you able to, at what age were you, or when in the healing were you able to?
I never even cried about her death until I was 29. So um, that's a good question. I did do things like energy work. I'm also an energy healer. I did energy work back in my 20s, and I did hypnotherapy, and they had me confront my mother. And I always had a fear of her, even though she was gone. That fear was still always lingering. And they said, well, we'll tie her down so she can't hurt you. And then this thought of, no, I don't want you to tie her down. I don't want her tied up. So it was like it was quite a journey to learn to forgive her and to understand. I read everything there is to read basically about alcoholism, understanding how she really didn't have much help available to her being deaf. I also had to get over guilt of feeling like I failed her because I took care of her and she committed suicide. I didn't do my job. I had to get over guilt. I felt like it was my fault for a very long time. And for a few years, I even told myself she's probably not dead, even though I saw her. She stabbed herself repeatedly in the stomach and throat. And yeah, and that's someone who's very angry at themselves. Women usually don't commit suicide that way. They usually, get dressed up, make sure their makeup's right, take some pills and lay down. And, because we all have that image, right? Because society tells us we have to have that image. But my mother was very devastated, very hurt. And I believe she was trying to take my life to shelter me from living what she thought is a terrible life, a terrible world. So it was a long road to learn how not to feel guilty, how to forgive, how to understand her illness and her lack of ability to even have the resources to get better, even if she wanted to. I can't tell you that there was one aha moment, but it was a journey, and little by little, I just kept reading and learning more about why things had happened, so I didn't have to blame her, and also mindset, because I had to go through life, you know, with that image in my head. And, you know, I was 13 years old, and my father had me go into the apartment the next day and help him clean up the blood. And because he was deaf too, and that's what your children did, they took care of you. And I was the one to identify her at the morgue. And I had to go through the I want to say funeral, but she really didn't have a funeral because we didn't have the money to do that. But I had to go through the process of planning all that. So it was a whole lot to take in, especially at that age. And I think that's why, you know, I kind of just started partying heavily, and I was like this cool kid partier, you know, but I was hurting inside. And then on top of that, it just kept snowballing, you know. And my stepmom didn't want my dad was remarried, and my stepmom didn't want me to eat there or wash my clothes there, or, you know, and they would get in big fights. So I'd be like, just forget it, Dad. And I'd leave, got a job with the local grocery store. And the guy who owned that molested me for 2 years. And I was just surviving. I was really just surviving. So, like I said, until I was like 23 years old, when I finally, everything kind of felt like, oh, okay, I'm engaged. I'm living with this wonderful guy. I will probably become a mother, which terrified me, and a wife. And I don't know, I felt safe, and I just sat down and everything stopped. And then I was like, oh my God, like there's so much going on inside. I don't even know what to do with it. So it was, like I said, very scary. And I am very grateful that I have come through it. And now I want to help others do that as well.
Can I give you feedback?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are so strong.
Thank you.
And that your joy and love and generosity for others that comes forward only acknowledges more of truly who you are and always who you've been. And I'm grateful to be having this interview with you.
Thank you.
How can people get in touch with you? And what does that look like? And the book, where's the book, Shirley?
The book is on Amazon. You can purchase it there, shirleybuck.com. I do plan on putting together a book signing tour. I look forward to that. So far, I have, I think, like 23 5-star ratings, and people are really saying they've been very inspired by it. I not only tell my story, I try to fit in tools and for every chapter of what I've been through and how I had gotten through that. And I tried to do my best to add some advice and tools in there as well. But so far I'm getting some lovely feedback, and it makes me feel good, because I was a little afraid to be that vulnerable. And I do teach that it takes more strength to be vulnerable than it does to build up walls, you know. And believe me, I've had my share of walls, but I laid it all out there my whole life, and it was scary, you know, because there will be people who try to prey upon people who have been through what I've been through. And maybe that's why it took so long for me to write it too, because I'm in a place where I know that can no longer happen to me, or at least I hope. I don't want to be that arrogant, but I feel like I've done enough work where I'm pretty confident. And so, yeah, the book is my story that I share with the world in hopes that it helps somebody realize that no matter what you've been through, you can come through it. And you can not only come through it, you can actually live a happy, abundant, wonderful life.
On that note, again, the book is Sweet Freedom.
Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear.
My Ear, Overcoming Abuse and Trauma, Shirley Buck. Pleasure and bravo, my friends. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my website is shirleybuck.com if anyone wants to schedule a call with me, and all the information's on my website.
Okay, good. We'll have the link. All right, everyone. Until next time.